Hey, it's Michael. I wanted to do a quick teaching on the semicircle from John chapter 15, just in case you're teaching this or in case you want to reinforce this. So let me pull up the whiteboard here. So Jesus is the shape of our lives. He's the one that we want to pattern our lives after. He's the one that is really the subject of our lives and the one that we want to imitate. And he said specifically there was a way that we should live, kind of a rhythm to life that he talked about. He mentioned this in John chapter 15, where he describes this relationship that we have to him, that he's the vine and that we're the branches and that the Father is the vine dresser. He says that the Father has created us to be able to bear fruit, and that he's called us, and it actually brings glory to the Father's name when we produce much fruit. You know, we're made to accomplish things. There's a purpose, behind all of that, that we're called to. But he also says that we're called to remain or abide in him, and that we're to stay closely connected to him, that really our life flows through him. So we're made to produce fruit. We're also made to remain connected to him and to abide in him. These two things somewhat are like on opposite ends of the spectrum, this productivity and this kind of more rest or connection side of things. One side is about us being human beings. That's the abide and remain. The other one is about us being human doings, and we are called to do stuff as well. Sometimes we get stuck in one over the other, especially in our day and age. We oftentimes get stuck in the being human doings. So what Jesus describes with the way that these two things interplay is that there's this rhythm between these two things, that we're called to rest and remain, to be connected with, and then out of that to go and to produce much fruit. We see Jesus doing this on a daily basis as he gets up early in the morning to spend time with the Father, and then out of that he seems to have marching orders to go and do the things that he's called to do, so much so that he says, I only do the things that I see the Father doing. He did this on a weekly basis as well. He took a Sabbath day of rest. Even though he broke the rules that the Pharisees and religious leaders had, he still remained with the Father, and then out of that went and worked for the 6 days that he did all of ministry. He even retreated in kind of seasons. In the latter part of his ministry, he went to Caesarea Philippi, spent time with the disciples there, away from the crowds, resting, and then out of that returns to Jerusalem with his face set toward it to go to the cross and to finish what he had come to do, to go bear much fruit. And so we're called to live in a rhythm like that with Jesus. So I'll use this semicircle to kind of show that pattern. There's two other components to this that come into play, that he says that the Father will prune us. So the Father will prune parts of our lives so that we will produce more fruit. This could be a form of discipline that he brings as he prunes something that maybe is not producing much life in us. Maybe he'll even cut some things completely off. But oftentimes he's just giving course correction. He's even taking something that's good, but he wants to produce even more fruit. So it doesn't have to mean that it's always like a disciplinarian thing or something that he's, bringing a form of conviction on. There's also a willing part that we can play in it, that we can let go of things after we've produced fruit and return. That idea of pruning is really found in this movement from a season or a day of fruitfulness and work in returning back to remaining. That pruning happens there in that phase of things. And then the other word that isn't specifically listed in the text of John 15 is the word grow. It's just the intended outcome of it all. As we remain and stay connected with the Lord, then growth is the byproduct of it. That is what takes place as we move in this direction over toward bearing fruit. Growth is what's taking place up until that fruitfulness. A lot of times this is the stuff that's happening kind of under the surface or underground. And a lot of times this is kind of root work stuff, just in the same vine and fruitfulness imagery that Jesus is using here. So this is the semicircle as a whole, really where it kind of comes down to, and the practical application comes to, is really then what are your daily rhythms for abiding and remaining with the Lord and then bearing fruit? What are your weekly rhythms for that? And then what are your seasonal rhythms for that? These are the things that we need to contend with if we want to be people who are living on mission in the way Jesus has called us to, and so that we can do it in a sustainable way. God's called us to live in rhythm with the way he's created us. Take care.